Have you ever wondered why two people can be the exact same age on paper, yet one looks, feels, and functions 10 years younger than the other? That's because your chronological age and your biological age are not the same thing. Chronological age is simply the number of birthdays you've had. Biological age is a reflection of what's actually happening inside your cells, tissues, organs, and metabolic systems. In other words, it's a measure of how quickly your body is aging. Now, here's where things get interesting. For years, omega-3 fatty acids have been associated with heart health, brain function, and reduced inflammation. But new research is suggesting something even more remarkable. Omega-3s may actually help slow the biological aging process itself, and not in theory. Researchers recently analyzed data from hundreds of older adults using advanced DNA methylation measurements, sometimes called epigenetic clocks, which are currently among the most sophisticated tools scientists have for estimating biological age. The findings showed that individuals taking omega-3 supplements experienced measurable slowing of biological aging, with even greater benefits when omega-3s were combined with vitamin D and regular exercise. Now, before you think this video is simply about taking a fish oil capsule every morning, that's not what we're talking about. We're going much deeper, because here's what's really going on inside your body. Aging is not just about the passage of time. Aging is heavily influenced by chronic inflammation, cellular damage, insulin resistance, mitochondrial dysfunction, and the health of your cell membranes. And omega-3s happen to influence every one of those systems. In many ways, they act like maintenance workers for your cells, helping reduce unnecessary inflammation, improving communication between cells, supporting the brain, protecting the cardiovascular system, and potentially slowing some of the molecular changes associated with aging itself. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly how omega-3s may influence biological aging, what the latest research actually shows, who benefits most, how much may be effective, and the practical steps you can start using immediately. And if you're interested in improving your energy, metabolic health, cognitive performance, and long-term longevity naturally, make sure you're subscribed. Because understanding how to age slower may be one of the most valuable health skills you can learn. One of the biggest misconceptions about aging is the belief that our bodies simply wear out like old machinery. But that's not entirely true. Here's what's really going on inside your body. A large portion of biological aging is driven by chronic low-grade inflammation. Scientists sometimes call this inflammaging, a combination of inflammation and aging. Now, let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine a small campfire. When it's controlled, it provides warmth and serves a useful purpose. That's how inflammation normally works. It's part of your immune system, it helps you heal from injuries and fight infections. But imagine that same campfire burning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Eventually, the constant heat starts damaging everything around it. That's what chronic inflammation does inside the body. It slowly damages blood vessels, accelerates insulin resistance, stresses the brain, impairs recovery, disrupts cellular communication, and increases the rate at which tissues age. The problem is that modern lifestyles constantly feed this inflammatory fire. Highly processed foods, excess sugar, poor sleep, chronic stress, physical inactivity. Environmental toxins. Over time, these factors create a biological environment that tells the body to age faster. This is where omega-3s become so interesting. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, help shift the body toward a less inflammatory state. They serve as building blocks for specialized compounds that help resolve inflammation once it's no longer needed. Notice the word resolve. The goal isn't to eliminate inflammation entirely. The goal is to turn it off when the job is done. That's what healthy physiology looks like. And that's one reason researchers have become so interested in omega-3s as a longevity tool. Recent findings from the DO-Health trial showed that omega-3 supplementation was associated with measurable slowing of biological aging markers over a 3-year period. The effects were modest, but they were consistent across several advanced epigenetic aging measurements. What can you do practically? Start by increasing fatty fish consumption 2 to 3 times weekly. Think salmon, sardines, mackerel, and herring. If you use a supplement, focus on products that provide meaningful amounts of EPA and DHA rather than generic fish oil marketing claims. And just as importantly, reduce the factors driving inflammation in the first place. Because longevity isn't created by a supplement, it's created by creating an internal environment where your cells can thrive. And if this is helping you understand aging from a completely different perspective, consider subscribing. We dive into the science of metabolic health, longevity, and natural healing every week. To understand why omega-3s may influence biological aging, we need to look beyond inflammation and go directly to the level of the cell, because this is where one of the most fascinating effects of omega-3s occurs. Most people think of nutrients as something the body simply uses and discards. But omega-3 fatty acids are different. They actually become part of your cells. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine every cell in your body is a house. That house has walls, doors, windows, electrical wiring, and communication systems. The cell membrane is essentially the outer wall of that house. It determines what gets in, what stays out, and how information travels between the inside and outside environments. Now imagine those walls becoming stiff, damaged, and less responsive over time. Communication slows down. Nutrients don't move efficiently. Hormones struggle to send their signals. The entire system becomes less adaptable. That's very similar to what can happen as we age. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every cell membrane is built largely from fats. The types of fats you consume become part of these membranes over time. When omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA, are incorporated into cell membranes, they help maintain flexibility, fluidity, and efficient communication between cells. Think of DHA as upgrading old rigid walls into modern smart walls that respond quickly and efficiently. This is especially important for the brain. In fact, DHA is one of the most abundant fats in the human brain and plays a critical role in nerve signaling, memory, learning, and cognitive function. But the benefits don't stop there. Flexible cell membranes also improve how cells respond to hormones such as insulin, and that's where the aging conversation becomes highly relevant. Insulin resistance is one of the most powerful accelerators of biological aging. When cells stop responding properly to insulin, blood sugar regulation worsens, inflammation increases, fat storage becomes easier, and mitochondrial stress rises. Over time, this creates a metabolic environment that promotes faster aging. Omega-3s help support healthier membrane function, which may improve insulin signaling and metabolic flexibility. In simple terms, your cells become better at listening to important instructions. This is one reason populations that consume large amounts of omega-3 rich seafood often show lower rates of cardiovascular disease and better long-term health outcomes. What the research shows is that omega-3 status is associated with healthier aging trajectories across multiple systems, including cardiovascular, cognitive, and metabolic health. So what's the practical takeaway? Aim to regularly consume omega-3 rich foods rather than relying entirely on supplements. Wild salmon, sardines, anchovies, trout, and mackerel are excellent options. For individuals who don't consume fish, algae-based DHA and EPA supplements can be an effective alternative. And remember, every meal is providing raw materials for your future cells. The fats you eat today may literally become part of the tissues you're relying on years from now. That's why aging is not just a matter of genetics. It's also a matter of cellular construction. Now let's talk about one of the most exciting developments in longevity science, epigenetic aging, because this is where the newest omega-3 research has generated so much attention. For decades, scientists struggled with a basic challenge. How do you actually measure aging? After all, wrinkles, gray hair, and birthdays don't tell the whole story. Researchers needed a way to estimate how quickly the body was aging beneath the surface. The answer came from something called epigenetics. Think of your DNA as the hardware of a computer. Your epigenetics are the software instructions that determine how that hardware operates. As we age, certain chemical tags accumulate on DNA. These changes influence how genes are expressed and provide clues about biological aging. Scientists can now analyze these patterns using sophisticated tools called epigenetic clocks. These clocks don't measure how old you are. They estimate how old your cells behave. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine two identical cars manufactured on the same day. One receives regular maintenance, quality fuel, and careful driving. The other is neglected, overloaded, and driven aggressively every day. 10 years later, both cars are technically the same age, but they have very different levels of wear and tear. Biological aging works in much the same way. And this is why the recent omega-3 findings are so important. In the DO-Health trial, researchers evaluated several epigenetic aging clocks and found that omega-3 supplementation was associated with a slowing of biological aging measurements over a 3-year period. The effects became even stronger when omega-3s were combined with vitamin D and regular exercise. This is a critical point. No nutrient works in isolation. The body functions as an interconnected system. Exercise improves mitochondrial health. Vitamin D supports immune regulation. Omega-3s reduce inflammatory stress and support cellular communication. Together, they create a biological environment that may promote healthier aging. This is exactly how functional medicine approaches health. Instead of searching for a single magic bullet, we optimize multiple systems simultaneously. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every day we break down the latest science into practical strategies you can actually use. Because understanding how aging works is powerful, but understanding how to influence aging may be life-changing. And as you're about to see, one of the biggest ways omega-3s may affect aging involves something that powers every cell in your body, your mitochondria. If you want to understand why some people maintain energy, mental sharpness, and metabolic health well into their later decades, you have to understand the mitochondria, because aging is not just a story of wrinkles and gray hair. It's also a story of declining cellular energy production. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Nearly every cell contains tiny structures called mitochondria. Their primary job is to convert food and oxygen into usable energy. You can think of them as microscopic power plants. When mitochondria function efficiently, cells have the energy needed to repair damage, regulate inflammation, maintain muscle, support the brain, and keep metabolism running smoothly. But when mitochondria become damaged, energy production falls. Fatigue becomes more common. Recovery slows. Metabolic flexibility declines. And many of the hallmarks of aging begin to accelerate. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine an entire city powered by thousands of electrical plants. If those plants are operating efficiently, everything works. Traffic lights function, hospitals stay open, businesses thrive. But if the power plants begin breaking down, the entire city becomes less productive and more vulnerable to problems. That's exactly what happens when mitochondrial function declines. One of the major drivers of mitochondrial stress is insulin resistance. When insulin levels remain elevated for years because of excessive sugar intake, frequent snacking, poor sleep, and inactivity, cells become less responsive to insulin's signal. The body compensates by producing even more insulin. Over time, this creates a vicious cycle of inflammation, fat storage, oxidative stress, and accelerated aging. This is why metabolic health and longevity are inseparable. You cannot separate aging from insulin regulation. What the research shows is that omega-3 fatty acids may help support insulin sensitivity, improve metabolic flexibility, and reduce inflammatory stress that damages mitochondria. Some studies have also demonstrated improvements in triglyceride levels and other markers of cardiometabolic health among individuals with higher omega-3 intake. In practical terms, omega-3s help create an environment where your cellular power plants can operate more efficiently. So what can you do? Start by reducing the metabolic stressors that damage mitochondria in the first place. Prioritize protein-rich meals. Limit ultra-processed foods. Avoid constant grazing throughout the day. Consider a consistent overnight fasting window of 12 to 14 hours if appropriate for your situation. Exercise regularly, especially walking and resistance training, and ensure you're obtaining adequate omega-3s through food or supplementation. Remember, longevity is not just about living longer. It's about maintaining energy production for as long as possible, because the quality of your mitochondria often determines the quality of your life. Now let's shift our attention to what may be the most valuable anti-aging organ in the entire body, the brain. When people think about aging, they're often focused on appearance. But for many individuals, the greatest fear isn't looking older. It's losing memory, losing focus, losing independence, losing the ability to think clearly. And this is where omega-3s play a particularly important role. The human brain is remarkably rich in DHA, one of the primary omega-3 fatty acids. In fact, DHA is a major structural component of brain cell membranes. That means your brain literally depends on adequate omega-3 intake to maintain optimal structure and communication. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine a city connected by billions of high-speed internet cables. Information moves instantly. Messages arrive clearly. The entire network functions efficiently. Now imagine those cables becoming damaged, rigid, or less responsive. Communication slows down, errors increase, performance suffers. This is similar to what can happen when brain cell function declines over time. As we age, inflammation, oxidative stress, poor metabolic health, and vascular dysfunction can all impair brain performance. The brain is particularly vulnerable because it consumes enormous amounts of energy, despite representing only a small percentage of total body weight. This means that anything improving cellular communication and reducing inflammatory burden may have significant implications for cognitive health. What the research shows is that omega-3s support multiple pathways involved in healthy brain aging, including membrane integrity, neurotransmitter function, blood flow, and inflammation regulation. While no nutrient can guarantee protection against cognitive decline, maintaining adequate omega-3 status appears to be one important piece of the puzzle. And here's something many people overlook. The same lifestyle factors that accelerate metabolic aging also accelerate brain aging. High insulin levels, poor sleep, sedentary behavior, chronic stress, nutrient deficiencies, they're all connected. The brain and metabolism are not separate systems, they're deeply intertwined. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Our goal is to help you understand how the body's systems work together so you can make smarter health decisions based on physiology rather than marketing. For practical implementation, focus on eating omega-3 rich seafood consistently, prioritize sleep quality, engage in regular physical activity, and challenge your brain through lifelong learning. Because protecting your brain isn't something you start at age 70. It's something you build every day through the choices you make right now. One of the biggest mistakes in health and longevity is looking for a single nutrient, supplement, or strategy that does everything. But biology doesn't work that way. Your body is not a collection of isolated parts. It's an interconnected network where every system influences every other system. And that's exactly why the most interesting finding from recent omega-3 research may not be omega-3s alone. It may be what happened when omega-3s were combined with other healthy lifestyle interventions. The DO-Health study found that the slowing of biological aging appeared strongest when omega-3 supplementation was paired with vitamin D and regular exercise. Rather than working independently, these interventions seem to reinforce one another's benefits. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to grow a healthy garden. You can have excellent seeds, but if there's no sunlight, poor soil, and no water, growth will be limited. Likewise, you can take omega-3 supplements every day, but if you're sleeping 5 hours a night, eating ultra-processed foods, sitting all day, and living under constant stress, you're fighting against your own biology. The body responds best when multiple longevity pathways are supported simultaneously. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Omega-3s help regulate inflammation and support cell membrane health. Exercise stimulates mitochondrial renewal, improves insulin sensitivity, preserves muscle mass, and enhances circulation. Vitamin D influences immune regulation, bone health, and numerous cellular signaling pathways. Quality sleep allows repair processes to occur while lowering excess cortisol and supporting hormonal balance. Together, these create an internal environment that encourages healthy aging rather than accelerated aging. This is root cause thinking. Instead of chasing symptoms, we improve the terrain in which cells operate. So if you want a practical longevity protocol, consider this framework. First, consume omega-3 rich foods regularly or use a quality EPA/DHA supplement if needed. Second, aim for at least 30 minutes of daily movement and include resistance training 2 to 4 times per week. Third, optimize vitamin D levels through sensible sun exposure and appropriate supplementation when necessary. Fourth, protect your sleep as seriously as you protect your diet. And finally, control the factors that drive chronic inflammation: excess sugar, processed foods, inactivity, and unmanaged stress. Because the goal is not simply to live longer. The goal is to create a body that remains resilient, energetic, and functional for as many years as possible. Let's bring everything together. When most people think about aging, they imagine something that simply happens to them. A process that unfolds automatically with each passing year. But what we've explored today tells a different story. While aging is inevitable, the rate at which we age appears to be influenced by the environment we create inside our bodies. And that's where omega-3s become so important. We've seen how chronic inflammation can accelerate biological aging. We've discussed how omega-3s become part of cell membranes, influencing communication between cells and supporting healthy function throughout the body. We've explored the emerging science of epigenetic aging and the fascinating research suggesting that omega-3 supplementation may help slow biological aging markers. We've looked at the role of mitochondria, insulin sensitivity, and metabolic health, factors that determine how efficiently your cells produce energy. And we've examined why the brain may be one of the greatest beneficiaries of adequate omega-3 intake. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: there is no magic bullet. The greatest benefits occur when omega-3s are part of a larger strategy that includes exercise, nutrient-dense nutrition, quality sleep, healthy vitamin D levels, stress management, and metabolic health optimization. Because longevity is not built through one decision, it's built through thousands of small decisions repeated consistently over time. Here's what I encourage you to do. Don't try to implement everything at once. Choose one action from today's video. Maybe it's adding 2 servings of fatty fish each week. Maybe it's starting a daily walking routine. Maybe it's improving your sleep schedule or discussing omega-3 supplementation with your healthcare provider. Pick one change. Commit to it. Then pay attention. Track your energy. Track your focus. Track your recovery. Track how your body responds. Because the body is constantly providing feedback when we learn how to listen. The exciting thing about longevity science is that it reminds us that aging is not simply about adding years to life. It's about adding life to years. And the choices you make today may influence how you think, move, feel, and function decades from now. If this video added value, be sure to like the video and subscribe to join a community of people committed to optimizing their health naturally. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.